Remember, infinite number of monkeys. It needs to be clear. It needs to be well organized. It needs to be comprehensive, right? That's a performance standard. You read through your own plan. Can you understand it? And what some of the CUPAs have said, oh yeah, the facility officer said, yeah, I didn't really know what the engineer meant, but we paid him, and you know, it has to mean something. They had a logo on their shirt. Well, if you don't understand something, ask, say something. It's your plan, you paid for it. Right? Remember, the plan does not have to follow the sequence of the rule. The plan can follow, it could be randomized for all anybody cares, as long as there's a good cross-reference in the rule. My opinion is, why would you do anything but follow the sequence of the rule? Now, we have written SPCC plans for facilities that have integrated contingency plans, that have all kinds of stuff in it. One chapter is the SPCC plan, right? So we wrote it in their format, but we put in a cross-reference. Aside from that, my personal opinion, there's no excuse to write a plan in any other means, you know, than follow. It's easy to do, it's easy to verify, and it'll help eliminate a lot of problems. And it's a very good cross-reference. You'll never see one as good as that. And no, I didn't write it. Actually, I think Tetra Tech, this was one of their plans. Please don't sue me, Tetra Tech. Yes, sir.
What I see a lot is somebody will take an old plan and call us and say, can you just update the form?
Yeah.
Or, you know, somebody else's plan.
Yeah.
Just update it.
Yeah. Well, that's why you charge money for it. Yeah, we have a couple of clients that say, here's our old plan. We need a new plan. All right. Well, we added a tank. All right, I'm going to rewrite your whole plan because I like the plans I write. All right. Anyway, example. Environmental equivalent. I know we're running long. Not running long. Well, we're going to run long. Not to really get into it, right? Not to get into it, but there and for everybody who's in the SPCC world, what's one federal guidance document that you should have on your computer, because God knows you don't want to print it out? No, you can print that out. That's 17 pages, right? EPA regional guidance for, or regional and SPCC regional inspector. Guidance for regional inspectors for SPCC, right? The latest edition is 2005 with the 2006 tweak. The 2012 edition is well underway to be revised. The old one is still really, really good. And for some of the areas that really count, like secondary containment, like environmental equivalence, like impracticability determinations, are fabulous. The stuff on integrity testing is still pretty good. It needs to be, and it's being updated to reflect the latest standards, right? But it's still pretty good, right? And they talk about if there's certain systems and things like not yet in place, you could address that in the plan. Or if there are certain things that are required in the rule, but they're just not practicable, you know, there's ways to do that. But what if there's just a different way to do something? It's not really addressed in the, I got a different way to do it, right? I'm going to use trained harbor seals who can smell the oil. And they're going to swim up the pipe. They're going to jam in the pipe. But their head fits up the top of the drain, and they bark in Morse code that there's been a spill, right? And the old Coast Guard guy that's still working at the plant in security, he knows Morse code. That's the emergency signal, and it plugs up the storm drain before the oil hits there, because these seals are wicked good at smelling oil. Can you use that for your general containment? Yes. I would do an environmental equivalence determination, having the engineer document fully why your means of using trained harbor seals who know Morse code is environmentally equivalent to using a frickin' drain pad, but you can do it, right? It's in the last version of the SPCC rule, EPA wrote in inherent flexibility in the area of security and a couple of other areas, really obviating the need for a lot of the environmental equivalence determinations. What if somebody says, I can't put secondary containment around this tank because of all these reasons. I just can't do it, so I'm going to use trained elephant seals because they tend to be on land a lot and they're really big. I only need a couple of them, right? Here's my alternative. I can't put in secondary containment, so I'm going to make an environmental equivalence determination. I'm going to use a boatload of spill pads. Can you do that? Come on, you guys, can you do that? No, you can't do that. Come on, environmental equivalence is not applicable to secondary containment. If you can't put in secondary containment, sized containment for whatever reason, that has to be a specific impracticability determination, 112.7D, right? There's various reasons why not. You just can't do it. Then there's compliance alternatives you have to do. Most of the time, it's cheaper to put in secondary containment or just replace that tank, right? And again, Pete can harp in if he likes, but my belief is that EPA looks at impracticability determinations pretty hard, pretty closely. There was a picture shown in one of the classes yesterday, right, of one of those harbor cranes that had a 2,000-gallon tank on it, right, and say, well, yeah, it's not practicable to put secondary containment on that, on that thing. What's the reason why it's impracticable? Why do you think? Yeah, you could put in a double-walled tank. Just cost a lot of money. You can't use cost as the sole determinant. You can't just say, well, it's really expensive. Yeah. Now, if you say, look, it's expensive, and it'll invalidate the German crane standard that I have to meet, there has to be other reasons, right? Structurally, I can't dig next to the building light. I can't do it, right? Here's all the different reasons why, not just cost. Think twice about impracticability determinations. There's usually something that can be done, right? Think outside the containment box. All right, these are different provisions. You read those. Let's get going. All right, there's a bunch of things you have to describe in the plan. We've already kind of harped on this. We're going to cover most of these. There's also just lists on your, in your handouts and such. Just remember, whatever has to be in a plan, you want to have it described. You want to be able to read it and understand what's going on, all right? How about, it's like the countermeasures for discharge, discovery, response, and cleanup, methods of disposal, emergency contact phone list. Why do you have to duplicate your efforts? Where should you have some of this information? Not all of it. Your business emergency plan or your hazardous materials business plan. What you want to do is take a look at that business plan, make sure it incorporates all the relevant SPCC stuff, phone numbers, National Response Center contact, right? What do you do with the recovered materials, right? So you want to make sure that's comprehensive and then reference that in your plan, right? And just make sure everybody knows if there's an emergency, what document they need to grab. If it's the emergency plan, then let it be the emergency plan. You don't want to have them flipping back and forth between multiple plans. Incorporate by reference. All right, you need to have written procedures for the routine handling and transfer of oil. That means you have to have procedures, written procedures, right? A common error at a lot of facilities, they don't have procedures, right? Or they have procedures, right? They're in the facility files. How should the CUPA generally verify this? Training records, yeah. How about going out to the facility, talking to one of the operators? Well, can you show me your written procedures? There's a lot of Scooby questioning going around, right? So there's a lot of that, yeah.
So, for instance, DOT, when you have a gas station on site, and you have a DOT truck come in and deliver and transfer fuel, you don't need written procedures, it's controlled by DOT.
You need written procedures. It will help, let me tell you. If it is at an otherwise regulated SPCC facility, what did we say about that transfer area at an otherwise regulated facility? It's in. Therefore, written procedures for the routine handling and transfer of oil is required. They have to have written procedures for that. Now, how could they do that? How could they possibly have procedures for the transferring of that fuel into that container and have the truck driver see it? Bolt it to the tank. These are procedures that are bolted to the fence at a remote transfer area.
Or to the ground storage
Yeah, something. Put it on a stanchion. Put it on a post. Have something. Relatively simple. That's procedures. You bet. Anything. Have something. Summarize them in the plan. They have to do this, that, the other. You summarize them in the plan. You got to put them on a piece of paper, laminate it, stick it out there at the location, right? Because again, the operators aren't going to be readily referencing the plan. You need to have something, right? Here's what we do. Then you need to verify that this is happening. I would like to say that you'll be surprised by what you see out there, but unfortunately, you will not be surprised by what you see out there. This is what you want to make sure is being implemented. Is this what they do? A lot of us plan writers write stuff into plans that look wonderful. Look at how wonderful these people are. Oh, they're protecting the environment so much that they actually reduce global warming and carbon load by implementing their SPCC plan. Right? There's a population explosion of whales when they load fuel into their tanks because their SPCC plan is so well. It needs to be implemented. You know, don't write stuff in that you're not actually going to do. Yes.
I have a couple facilities that have gasoline storage tanks above ground.
Yeah.
500 gallons each. They would require posting at that site or no?
You're required to have written procedures. You're required to have, if you're an SPCC regulated facility, you're required to have written procedures for the routine handling and transferring of oil.
So it doesn't need to be posted for
You need to have written procedures, and they need to be implemented. My personal opinion, I like them at the point of process. That way, when the CUPA inspector shows up, I grab one of the operators. Do you have written procedures? We tend to train the operators to look around. Well, yeah, we have procedures. Yeah, we have procedures, and I write procedures on the top to make it helpful. I do. On the inspection forms, because you have to have written procedures for the routine inspections, right? I write on my inspection form, procedures and inspection, inspection form and written procedures. And it's a procedure. Look at the tank. Look for this, that, and the other. That's procedure.
That
Yeah.
includes if you're taking a 55-gallon drum.
It includes for the routine handling of oil products. And in the rule, there's, I think, 2 or 3 examples. Transfer of oils, loading and unloading. I've seen some plans include driving around of drums. I've seen them not. In my plans, I will usually put in 4 or 5 or 6 bullets on drum handling. You inspect the drum, make sure they're closed, and then I make sure that that's incorporated in the training that we do. Is that a written procedure? Well, now, how much detail is required in a procedure according to the federal rule? There is no required level of detail. What does it have to be? Adequate or well, this may be adequate, but it's not appropriate. It has to be. I'm just happy they spelled it right. Right. This was a Wayne Geyer photo that he took when he was on vacation.
Oh, don't get me into all this.
See, look, you're there hiding in back. What did you ask me to do last year?
Don't show the manufacturer's name.
I moved my little note.
You did. It's a funny slide.
This is one of my favorite pictures.
It's one of my favorites.
You know, but there's no criteria. It has to be adequate. Who's the one, aside from the CUPA or EPA, who's the one that looks at this and says, that ain't an adequate procedure, you need more? Who's the one to do that? Who's one of the ones to do that? The certifying engineer, because what's that engineer certifying? That that adequate procedures are in place and that the plan is adequate for the facility, right? Hopefully owner-operators say, no, I think we need more. But ultimately, whoever's certifying the plan, they're certifying that that's adequate. How do you know that that's not adequate? Well, there's oil here. That's not shit. That's oil. So they're not, well, maybe they are following their procedures. I don't know. Nah, there's issues here, right? So they need more than that. But again, you could write them on the tank. They don't have to be all formal, fancy, right? Facility diagram. You have to have a diagram and at least the size, the number, the contents of the containers, connected piping, transfer stations, loading areas, unloading areas. I'm always questioning how much detail to put in for piping. And we're not talking about a marine terminal, refinery, bulk plant that will have page after page of diagram of piping. Like my typical industrial facilities, maybe the piping's on the tank, or my power plants, there's a boatload of piping all over, and somewhere at that facility, there's 4,500 pages of drawings of piping. I tend not to put piping on my facility diagrams. Heck, I use Google Earth images, annotated as my facility diagrams. I guess I will know if that's adequate or not after somebody inspects one of my client facilities, but I never know how much detail to put in.
How's that guarantee going?
Well, if somebody requires it to be fixed, then I'll fix it. That's the guarantee. You know, show up to one of my places within the 2-year run of that. Now he will. No. But no, like with the guarantee, no, if it requires to be updated and fixed, then we'll update it and fix it. But I mean, it is a question. I know the reason for it, right? But I never was sure how much detail to put in. I will put in that additional detail is at the facility, where that the piping is located pertinent to the tank. Now, for portable containers, this is a big question that comes up with drums and stuff. What about drums? What about portable containers? What happens if I get another drum at the plant? Oh my God, that's a technical amendment. EPA was great. They amended in 2008. They clarified that for the diagram has to include fixed containers and such, but for mobile refuelers or portable containers, or for mobile containers, you have to identify the storage area, normal storage area, and you know, what kind of containers are in the storage area, how much, what an estimate of the potential number, contents. There's inherent flexibility in the rule. You know, so what we'll do as an example, I think I have a drawing here. Yeah. What we'll do is, you know, fixed tank, tank 3, this, you know, Google Earth, right? Hazardous waste, you know, drum storage area here, hazardous waste area here, drum storage area way here in the big machine shop, right? The grinding shop, you know, here's a tank, here's a tank. And then in the plan itself, or in the table that we put together, we'll put in the drum storage area, the facility has an average of, you know, we'll ask the facility, all right, how of all these lubes and oils and hydraulic fluid, what's the most of these that you'll ever possibly have? 30 of them. You'll never, ever, ever have more than 30. No, ever. All right. Facility has an average of 50, 55-gallon drums, but may have a maximum of 100 drums stored in anywhere in this area. But under operational use, they could be located anywhere in the facility under operational use. Wherever they are located, they are provided with sized containment. One drum, under cover here, one drum or 100 drums, what kind of containment do they need? Sized containment. What's the liquid capacity? 55 gallons. One drum or 100 drums. The issue with 100 drums is that's an awful lot of displacement. So our engineering challenge is make sure that if they ever did have 100 drums, it would still hold 55 gallons plus whatever, you know, rainfall may get in there, etc. But inherently write in flexibility is my suggestion. Yeah, if you put in too much stuff, then that may be an issue with the business plan. However, those are two different plans and documents. The SPCC plan can say they may have up to 100 drums. In real life, they may only have 20 sitting there. And we will advise them, but it's a separate plan. If they ever do increase, they don't have to touch their expensive PE certified plan. They need to amend their business plan. That's a separate document. Right. It says to you that the SPCC plan can provide a range as long as they have the appropriate containment, but the business plan represents what's in place. They're two different documents. They do not have to interconnect. Well, then do it on the maximum. But then if it becomes an issue of, well, you're going to bill them based on the maximum, then they put down what the real life maximum is. I'm trying to write the plan so that they have it. Can't help that. My recommendation, you know, is that they do the business plan per accurate real world, and the SPCC plan, they write in flexibility, because it doesn't cost that much to update a business plan. They want to tweak an SPCC plan to add more containers. Now they're having it recertified. I don't want to put my clients in that position.
Can you put like an amendment at, you know?
I wouldn't do that in the plan. I wouldn't do that in the SPCC plan. The business plan's a separate program, and you know, if when you're doing inspections for both programs at the same time, just recognize that there is allowable inherent flexibility in the plan, in the SPCC plan. And what's in the SPCC plan as inherent flexibility, including maximums, has nothing to do with the business plan program. It's a completely separate It's a completely separate program.
But couldn't you just state at this time there's 30, you know, drums,
But then what if you get?
To a future of 100 drums? That way we.
I wouldn't put down at a future. I would just put they have average of X number, maximum of X number, and just leave it at that. And if there's confusion, I can't help it, you know. And from a business plan standpoint, it doesn't matter what's said in the SPCC plan for a business plan. It just doesn't, because you shouldn't be billing them based on what they stated in the SPCC plan. I mean, now, it's an issue if they're a qualified facility and you don't want to give them flexibility that it's going to kick them into a full PE facility, right? So, I mean, you do have to, you know, I'm not going to give them a range that's going to kick them over a qualified facility threshold. You shouldn't be. Well, I shouldn't say that. You should look for consistency where it's appropriate. That's not appropriate, because they are two separate requirements, two separate standards. You know, you just don't. I mean, yeah, I mean, you want to, you know, if they say there's a 2,000 gallon capacity tank over here, look at the business plan, 2,000 gallon capacity tank over here. You want to make sure that that 2,000 gallon tank is represented on both, but they don't have to connect together. They don't. They're separate programs. Because if we write SPCC plans to be as specific as it is to a business plan, we're either going to get that facility in trouble by not keeping up with technical amendments, or I'm going to be able to get that Acura NSX a couple years early. And I'm, you know, I don't need to do that. My wife says I do, but I don't. And I don't want to take more time, but as we covered in the APSA inspector training, there are different regulatory programs. Most of them have nothing to do with one another. A facility could be relatively in compliance with their SPCC plan, but have fire code issues, right? If you're going to hit them on fire code, hit them on fire code, right? They're two separate plans, even though you're there for multiple reasons. They are two separate plans. One more question on this, then we got to go. Pete.
I need to ask that you guys, if you have uncertainties as you're conducting inspections as CUPA inspectors, to either come to EPA or go to STEAM and help yourselves by getting some clarifications rather than trying to overassert your jurisdictional authority. So that's a problem. That turns into a problem for us. We want to help you, and we don't necessarily get it right all the time either. So if there's an issue we don't know, I'll turn to headquarters on their support, and they'll help provide guidance and technical assistance to us, which we will do with you. And so this is one aspect.
And like, for example, a lot of CUPAs, you know, inspectors, they have questions, they'll email me, right? And I always, if I, you know, I'll answer it as the consultant, non-enforcement guy, but I always copy Randy Sawyer on the APSA working group, on the Cal CUPA Forum Board APSA working group, and it goes out to everybody on that APSA working group. In many cases, and more what I'm doing, because you know everybody's really getting well up to speed, right? I will just directly send it up there and refer it and have it run through the working group. And if it's a broader issue, that will be reflected in one of the new frequently asked question updates. You know, so anytime an inspector asks me a question like that, it always goes through the working group. You know, for you know, coordination or agreement, whatever. I'd say really doesn't count. That's my opinion. And I would not write a plan to conform to a business plan. I would write a plan to conform to the federal rule, is what I would do. All right, spill prediction. Plans have to have a prediction of spills. Any plan, Tier 1 template plans, right? And the plans have to include a prediction of the discharge resulting from each type of major equipment failure. And the rule provides examples: loading and unloading equipment failure, tank overflow, other equipment. For each failure mode, the predicted rate, the predicted direction, and the quantity. I've seen a lot of plans where they spend a bunch of money on engineers trying to figure this out. I don't know. I'm sure bulk plants, there's a need for that. For your typical manufacturing or industrial facility, that's not needed. It's not like it takes a whole lot of research for most things, right? I have and I know it's hard to read, I have an above ground storage tank. Failure of the tank at or above the liquid level. It's a 1,900 gallon tank, 1,900 gallons maximum. Rate, gradual, instantaneous. Where is it going to go? Okay, overfill, 60 gallons at 20 gallons a minute. How'd I get that? As it says in the unreadable footnotes, who's your oil vendor? These guys. Call them up. How do you deliver oil? Well, we always use a small truck. What's the pump capacity on it? Well, pump capacity on the thing is 20 gallons, it's 20 gallons a minute. All right, well, how do you guys do it? We bring the truck, we wheel in the hose, we dump it on top of the tank, we have to go walk all the way over here. They have a spill, it'll probably take them 3 minutes to figure out that they're overfilling the tank, then they could shut it off. 3 minutes at, 20 gallons a minute, 60 gallons. Even I, who took math twice, not because I liked it, right? Piping failure, it's a pretty small pipe, we thought maybe 10 minutes. All right, somebody loading into a 55-gallon waste drum with a hand pump. Oh no, I have an overfill. Crap. Why didn't they put the procedures closer? But it has to be based on some sort of reality. Why is the spill prediction important? Because that's what your general containment, in large part, is based on. Sufficient containment or other diversionary measures to keep the most likely release, typical failure mode, typical volume, from getting into the navigable waterway. What is the typical failure mode? What is the typical volume? It's on these tables. I've seen a lot of plans. I'm sure some of you have seen a lot of plans. Failure prediction, none. This facility has experienced no failures. Well, that's not what it means. Failures have occurred. There have been tank overfills in the world. And anybody who has any kind of SPCC credibility ought to be able to figure out overfills, hose ruptures, tank ruptures. Relatively straightforward, yeah. Anyway, these are just two example tables. Most of the time they look kind of like this. I like to see and include the basis for it, but it's not required, but I like to see it. Now, what's an inspector likely going to not challenge you on, but try and verify? That if your way of preventing a spill into the drink, your general containment is based on this volume, that you have the wherewithal to contain that volume. This is a real big disconnect between your plan writer and engineer and the facility. You, the facility, having somebody write your plan or you writing your plan, you really want to have whoever's writing and certifying your plan explain this to you. Because you have to make sure that you can respond to this, particularly the overfills, not necessarily the catastrophic rupture of the tank. That's what size containment does for you. But this really, because I have people say, the engineer wrote that. I don't know what that is. Well, you should have reviewed it with them, right? Because this is your facility. You need to be responsible for your plan content. Have them explain it to you. Yeah. Yes. No, it could be estimated. It could be estimated. No, it could be. What do you mean rate of flow undetermined? Bastards. They need to determine it or estimate it or engineering it. I mean, it's like with a catastrophic failure, well, gradual to instantaneous, I think that covers it, which is similar to undetermined, right? But, for unloading hose, piping failure, loading hose failure, tank overfill, that's absolutely determinable. And that's a lazy consultant. Bad consultant. Unless it's one of you.